AI developer Rich Swire says that very soon your first love may be your AI assistant, besides your mom, of course. In this interview, I sit down with Rich and he talks about what he's developing right now and that everybody pretty soon will have an AI assistant, which seems crazy to me because will that take away jobs? Many people say yes, but then on the other side, many people say no, that AI will simply enhance jobs and help us be more productive. Well, in the housing market, the only thing that I believe that has saved this market from crashing big time is the fact that our jobs market has been relatively strong, at least for the people that can afford to buy a house. I hope you enjoy the show. All right, Rich, thank you so much for sitting down with me at this Inman conference. Tell everybody who you are, what you do, what's Roof.
Sure. So, my name is Rich Swire. I'm an entrepreneur. My background is actually mathematics and computer science, if you believe it. I had numerous companies prior to entering into the real estate world. I was kind of introduced to it about 10 years ago. I was working on a project using mathematics and machine learning to really predict future outcomes. And real estate seemed to be an interesting place to do that. So we built a product around predicting what homes were more likely to sell. So we grew that business over the course of 7 or 8 years, and then I ended up exiting the business. I sold it to Constellation Software a few years back. And so now I'm working on a new venture, primarily focusing on generative AI, which is, for most people is what you see when you use like ChatGPT. And I'm super pumped about like what it can do for businesses, not just in real estate, but across all industries. It's fantastic technology that I think is going to help, really change the landscape for just how we interact as consumers with everything we do. So pretty pumped about that, but that's basically my background.
So what does your platform do now?
So our product that I'm focused on right now is the easiest way to explain it. It's an AI-powered assistant. So the low-hanging fruit that we see where adoption is going to be rapid in the next 6 to 12 months is going to be building out an assistant that can help you qualify and essentially convert your leads. So any business, including ours, has numerous leads coming through the pipeline. You're out there trying to work up business. Even like at a conference like this, I might get 50 to 100 leads, but who has the time to call them, follow up, ask them the right questions, qualify them? So we actually have an AI assistant that'll send an SMS text message or an email to these leads and actually have a conversation with them and ask them the questions that I want them to ask. So they'll say like, hey, I saw you at the conference. How did it go? Did you have a good time? Oh, by the way, you visit our booth. Can we answer any questions you have? And then eventually drive it to a call to action, like an appointment. So I always kid myself. It's, a lot of people say AI will replace people, but in actuality, it actually kind of clones you. So I always joke, I wish I could clone myself. And technically that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm building out AI assistants that allow people to train them on everything they want to be trained on, provide them a personality, and to some degree clone them to do the things that they don't want to do. Who wants to sit up and call thousands of leads, and who wants to respond to leads at at 9 p.m. at night when you're with your family? But AI is willing to do it and willing to do it with a smile.
So how does it do it where you don't know it's an actual, like I call them bots?
Yeah. So, you can obviously, it's a personal decision on whether you want to say, hey, I'm your AI assistant. I'm working with Rich. I'm asking a few questions. I'd like to schedule time for, that's convenient for you. You could be forefront, or you could just let it rip and just kind of say, hi, and our AI bot's called Rhea. So we say, hi, this is Rhea. And I'm reaching out. I saw you came by the booth. Happy to answer any questions. Now, 80, 90% of the time through SMS and through email, they would not know that it's not human. But if they were to ask, it would say, oh, I'm an AI assistant. I think this is what we talk about when we talk about technology and culture lag. What's going to happen, and we've seen it time and time again where people are kind of like, oh, that was weird. I was talking to an AI bot, or that was kind of weird, that experience. But then 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now, it'll be like standard and accepted, and people will just get used to it. Not too dissimilar to, I used to remember, like, when they introduce any new technology, like putting cameras on phones, like who the heck is going to take a picture with their phone? Or, even ATMs back in the day, like who's going to stand out and type a code in and get money? What happened to the teller? But, everything ultimately goes the way of automation and convenience. And AI is just one of those giant leaps forward that you just can't ignore, and you just have to embrace and adopt as quick as you can if you want to stay relevant.
It's weird. I remember when Siri first came out, and you kind of want to be nice to it.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of weird. You know, you almost want to say like, thank you, you know, for giving you such a great, you know, answer to what it was that you're looking for. And this is a trainable kind of system, is it not?
It's much different than Siri, yeah. So Siri is really just kind of, so if you really want to look back at the origins of how we got here, especially when you're talking about conversational AI, it really started with closed caption, honestly. That's where innovation started. Like, they needed to be able to take movies and translate them to text easily. And then as people started innovating around voice to text and things like that, they started going, well, we need to understand what that person said, maybe in an accent. And then eventually Google had this brilliant idea on new architecture, which is where GPT came from, and published this paper a few years back. And then suddenly people were like, oh, that's such an ingenious way to do it. And all it really does at the end of the day is it predicts what's the next word in a sentence that's most likely to be said as I'm talking. And it sounds very trivial and very interesting. Like, you're like, oh, is that how it actually talks? And you're like, yeah, all it's doing is saying, I'm going to put out a sentence, and I've consumed so much information from the internet, billions and billions and billions and billions of sentences. I think I know what's going to happen next. I know what word is going to happen next. And that is really transformative and very powerful. But at the end of the day, you know, Siri is kind of, all that was really doing is searching and providing a voice of a text that was already in existence. Like, what's the weather? Oh, the weather is this. But you were at the cusp of basically seeing AI have its own personality, being trained on certain things in a certain way. And it can be very personalized too. I think the ChatGPT experience is kind of a one-for-all experience. But the stuff that we're working on and a lot of other businesses are working on is really being able to personalize and fit with whether it's the brand that you want to represent as a business or even as a person, like personal assistant. If you want your personal assistant to be snarky or to be funny or to say jokes or to kind of, you know, rib you, you can. It's really cool.
That's amazing. So when someone is utilizing this bot and they're answering the questions, you're collecting all that into a database. What happens with that information, and, you know, how does that adapt or change, you know, a different type of response or a prompt to go to the next, carrying it to the next step?
Yeah, so there's really two drivers, you know, without getting too technical, there's two drivers that an AI, generative AI or conversational AI uses. It uses obviously the existing conversation you're having. So if you're in an existing, let's just call it, let's say you're doing a chat, and whatever you say within that chat, it's going to take in context. So if you say, hey, what's the capital of Tallahassee or capital of Florida? It's going to say Tallahassee. Oh, what's the weather there? It's going to understand that you're referring back to Tallahassee. So in you know, as you're chatting with it, it is going to maintain its understanding that you just mentioned this, and it's going to refer back to that. So it's very good about that. The second way it does it is you can, by choice, this is up to really the program itself. It doesn't happen this way in ChatGPT natively. So when you're done with ChatGPT and you exit a conversation, it forgets it. It's like it never knew you. You know, in the case of software like what we build, which is very important for us to have context of that conversation ongoing. Like, for example, if we're nurturing a lead for a real estate agent, we want to know what we said in June and July and August, even if those conversations are at different points in time. So that can be stored in what's called fine-tuning or training the actual AI. So it can be reintroduced as context. So a great example would be, let's say somebody's looking to sell their home. You have a conversation with them in January. Like, listen, I'm not looking to list my home until the summer. My kid is leaving for college. I want to downsize. I might even move to another part of town. So that conversation happens and is noted. And then when you reintroduce the message back to them and say, hey, it's been about 6 months. How's it going? As your college, you know, you can actually refer back to that conversation. And that's what's called fine tuning or prompting. But that has to be done outside. That's not native within kind of the OpenAI or ChatGPT product. That's what all these other companies like my own are building on top of. So all the things that we're adding on top of are the real core functions that you're needed to in order to do the business applications to really have a professional product. ChatGPT is really good at, and OpenAI, which is really the company that does that, is really good at conversations. But as far as all the functionality, it's up to software developers like me to build that.
So will you take the information, there's so much of a digital footprint out there that we have, and, speaking with, other people in the space and just understanding it myself that, I think like, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I have a friend of mine that works for a national security agency, and we were talking, and he was saying, based on all of your online searches, and now with a lot of the tracking devices, I mean, even 10 years ago, the technology was there where, it takes everything and puts it together. And he was saying, this machine learning actually knows more about you than your spouse, because you're, and not that maybe it's intentional, maybe it's not, but you're not having every conversation with your spouse that you think, or thoughts that come into your head, but we actually type it out sometimes when we're looking for, we don't feel well, we want to put in there, I got a pain in my whatever, right? And then all of a sudden that is all 100%. Collected. When you're looking at a product like this, are you trying, and maybe this even in the business that you had prior that you sold, or are you trying to take that footprint, if you will, and team that up with their behaviors to even take it one step further?
So I think you're going to see two dynamics which are very interesting. One is what you just described is the unfortunate side of the internet, right? The behavior of the internet today is we go out and we click and scroll and search on a variety of different websites, but primarily Google's and the social media sites drive most of the traffic from what we do, right? We're going to go Google this, right? What I think AI, specifically implementing it as, like, call it your buddy or your assistant, right? Or your personal bot, in your words, it's going to change that dynamic. It's going to be better for personal security. And I'll explain why. So now, even your phones themselves, like this is a Google phone, and they're coming out, or they already have a Tensor chip. They have a TensorFlow chip, which is an AI ready chip that'll be baked into this. A lot of the AI components, your personal assistant, will be native and secure on your phone, and will never, all these private searches and all these things that you do that you're like basically giving out to all these advertisers to leverage, you can actually maintain on your phone. So think of it more like, instead of me saying, the equivalent would be if you wanted to Google something, to be walking into that main room with 100 people and say, hey, who here knows the capital of Florida? And you're going to get 4 or 5 people shout out. That would be the equivalent of a Google search. But all that data is collected, and even if they didn't answer or give you the information, they know what you're looking for. Whereas an AI says, and me kind of whisper in your ear saying, hey, you know what the capital of Florida is? It's just between me and you. So AI is going to change the dynamic of privacy, which is a good thing. It's obviously, there's always bad actors. They could always obviously use it in a different way, but I do think that the best products are going to come out are going to be like really intimate personal assistants for that reason. But yeah, I mean, I think from your question, as far as how can this data be leveraged, certainly there's going to be people, specifically the people that own the data, that have the data, like Googles and the Apples and the Facebooks of the world, are going to leverage it to understand you better, serve you better information, so obviously they can sell more ads. But again, they're also behind the scenes scared to death of AI diverting all that traffic to your local phone, and it will still go out to the internet to some degree to grab information, but it'll be completely anonymous because your AI is going to go out and get it. They're not tracking you down to your personal information, your personal ID. So there's a lot of beneath the scenes, and this is why it's a race. All these people are like racing. Google's, Microsoft with OpenAI, and Facebook are all racing to give away AI, because they know if they don't understand it, or if they don't own it and don't play a big role in it, their advertising business that is quite honestly abused our privacy is going to start to fade.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You just jumped into the real estate space not that long ago.
Yeah.
So how long ago?
I launched Offers in 2014, so almost 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with Offers, it was interesting because you predicted when someone would be ready to sell their home.
Correct.
And that has to be based on a lot of the information that you just mentioned, right? Because weren't you either aggregating or somebody was aggregating to you? How did you collect to know that, well, if somebody went on and looked at Zestimate or, they were doing some other things like searching what's it
Right.
like to live in, North Carolina, and they're in, Baltimore, Maryland. I mean, what kind of tools with that product were you deploying to be able to accurately? I mean, you were doing that pretty accurately.
So pretty cool thing is we don't use personal information. We built our algorithm. Real estate, the one cool thing about real estate is all the data, for the most part, that you need to really do some amazing things is public, right? So we have assessor data, tax assessor data readily available. We have to buy it, but essentially it's there, right? Who bought, what bought, everything is very readily accessible. MLS, all this information can be compiled. So we built our algorithm using machine learning, specifically predictive analytics, which is actually, the other side of the coin of AI, right? AI has two sides. One is the generative AI, which is very popular today, but the other one, which has been around forever, is predictive analytics. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Moneyball, but the Oakland A's and how they went to the series. They used the same mathematic model that I used at Offers, which is they went out and recruited players saying, this guy is not a top tier player, but he's going to hit he's going to hit 2 singles this year. And that's, as long as we get our number of singles up to 140, we'll be in a race for the pennant. And so they just started recruiting these weird players, and everybody thought they were crazy, but they ended up going all the way, to the finals. So that's similar to what we do. So we'll look at, we'll scope a zip code and say, like, all right, we're obviously looking at length of years they've lived in it. We were looking at, different components, how much money when they bought it, what the value of it when they bought it, what they have now, what the profitability, if they're a second owner, is this an investment property? There's enough variance there to get pretty accurate. Now, I will say and admit that once you have that information and start marketing to those people, obviously, if they engage with your marketing, that's a really big signal. So if you're putting out there, hey, are you thinking about selling? Once you understand who you're marketing to, like in a direct mailer or an online ad, and they click on that ad or they respond to the mailer and look up their home value, that takes it to another level. And then at that point, we gather their information. They opt in and they say, yeah, I actually am thinking of selling. Here's my name. Here's my email. I'd like to learn more, or I want to know what my home value is. And actually, that's where our generative AI kicks in. Because now we have leads. We have 30,000 leads coming in. And most agents that buy our product don't have the time or energy to actually follow up with these leads. They don't do a great job of getting back to them quickly. Speed to lead is a very big problem. So if a lead comes in at 8 p.m., they're like, and they don't realize that if you don't get back within a lead within 5 minutes, 80% chance they're going to go somewhere else. So with Rhea, our generative AI assistant is able to respond to leads immediately and also predict and help drive the marketing. That's kind of the combination. That's how we got here.
Wow. So you took that to the next level, really. So since you've been in the real estate industry, 10 years, call it, you've been dealing with agents. Our industry is under attack. I mean, I've been serving the housing market since 1989 in one way or another. But now on the sales side of it, I'm a real estate broker. And I have watched what has happened over the last year. And with, all of the scrutiny from the Department of Justice being involved with NAR, and now with these massive class action lawsuits being successful too, I might add. What's your predictability? Right? Well, let's use your mathematics here. What do you think? Let me ask you what you personally think about the real estate industry from an agent perspective. Sort of like overall. And then number 2, do you see, because your business model is very interesting, because though the agent may be the conduit right now for your success, it could very easily be a consumer-driven model.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of interesting things happening that I don't feel like we've completely seen the full impact. I think we had, obviously with COVID, that kind of was the starting point of just changing the dynamic of everything, right? There was a lot of money coming in. Interest rates were very low. It was just a weird time. It's even hard to even remember what happened or how we even got where we are today. But then, of course, the second thing that you mentioned, where buyer agents, or a lot of agents that, pretty much focus on buyers, and buyers themselves, they have access to all this information that they didn't have 30, 40 years ago. And it was only a matter of time before buyers started to say, well, maybe I don't really need an agent, right? And I don't know if we've done a good job as an industry of showing very clearly what agents do on the buy side, right? And on the seller side, it's kind of part of the business, right? You have to show like, oh, listen, I've been successful in selling. Here are the 5 houses I just sold. I understand this neighborhood. I've got buyers in the queue that I can introduce you to. Look at my listing presentation. It was a very professional and a very good, it's like selling, like any service, you're selling yourself. On the buyer side, it's I think we just got to do a better job of showing value. And I know there's some really smart people working on this, building out tools and technology to do so. And then I think just in general, the market, we live in a time where I think it's hard for any economist to understand what dynamics are ahead in the next 10 years, because you have a massive percentage of our population that are wealthy, that are retired, right? I mean, you have the baby boomers and they own a ton of real estate, and there's really no reason for them to give it up. There's no reason for them to sell it. There's going to be a massive transfer of wealth, to the next generation, but that's years away. And so when you talk about the inventory issue, I mean, everything is just makes it very tight and tough. So, I mean, the way that we plan for this and look at this is say, listen, it's good for us to some degree, to be selfish, to be quite honest, because we do focus on listings, and we do primarily, our client base are sellers. And I think a lot of the buyer agents, if they want to stay in business, they're going to have to move to the seller side. So they need to find a solution to help them get listings. But number two, I think I think it is kind of good, maybe not in the next 12 months, but agents that stick with it and stay in the business of real estate and that are serious about being in business of real estate, there'll be more transactions per agent, right? So that's because you have a mass exodus of agents. They're going to get out of the business. They're not going to be able to survive. And it's also going to be harder for a lot of what I would call hobbyist agents to survive, because if you have to, a lot of hobbyist agents are typically represent the buyer side, and in many cases, unless they're they're listing their house for their uncle or something like that. But it's not going to be a part-time occupation, and I think that's one of the things that people have to realize too. I think people have to say, I'm either in this business or I just have to find something else. But all those factors, I think, lead to a healthier environment. And even when you're mentioning automation and going direct to consumer, I don't think technology has ever been really, really good at replacing what I would call the human element of a transaction. And I think even if we had general intelligence like AGI, like even today, where it was like super smart, or it would be like hyper awkward. And it wouldn't be trustworthy, right? And you wouldn't know who's behind it, right? So at the end of the day, I do think there's a massive element of human that's going to maintain in this business for quite some time. But what we always say is AI is your superpower. So agents that embrace AI and use it for, like an example of our assistant, or for whatever reason, it's going to make them more competitive and more compelling, and also very impressive to the consumer. I mean, if somebody said, what would be the one thing that would allow agents to prove their worth and to go above and beyond what tools are out there today, like the Zillows of the world, if an agent could creatively bring AI into the forefront of generating quickly generating, summaries of documents. I met with a company today that does contracts, and I was like, are you guys even thinking about AI just reading through a 20-page contract and providing a bulleted summary? Because that would be powerful for agents. Once agents understand that this tool can make them look like a rock star, the gap between what they do and what they offer and any one of these other websites, it will be very noticeable, and they'll deserve the commission. But there's a leap of that they have to take very quickly, I think. But overall, I think we have 18 months, maybe 24 months of stagnation and challenges, and it's going to take time for everybody to catch up and to embrace technology. But then after that, I would think that we'll see it loosen up quite rapidly. And if you're not ready for that, it'll be too late. I think people who are preparing for right now, building out, kind of strengthening with their position and maybe even expanding their markets, are going to dominate come 18 to 24 months when things speed up.
Well, you're making me motivated to get on it. So, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Will be very fun to watch your growth and see how you adapt and help people in this industry. I know what you're doing is certainly it's going to really going to elevate the bar, and other agents in general, they will need to get on board with this, or they probably won't be around. And, so anyway, I thank you for that, and I'm looking forward to a follow-up as you dive more into this.
Yeah, it's early,
platform.
and there's a lot of exciting things down the pipe, and it's only been out, this specific area has only really been out 6 to 12 months, in the commercial way, and we're all super excited to see what happens. And it's not just real estate; every industry is going to have is having to face the same thing: is how do I automate? How do I accelerate my business without adding a tremendous amount of cost? Because, in this market, you have to be aggressive. You have to continue to sell. You have to convert more. You have to turn, more lead into gold, but you don't have a lot of money to spend to do it.
You can't let anyone get away also.
Right, exactly.
And that's what you're trying
That's
to
the key.
really buckle down on is, we
Yep.
can't let anything slip through the cracks.
Every lead counts. And
Yes.
these aren't the days of like, oh, I'll get back to them on Tuesday. I've got 2 showings. I don't really need. No, it's every lead counts, speed to lead, 24/7, real time. I always tell people, what if you could close your eyes and with a magic wand have an assistant that you could hire that was 24/7, responded to every lead within seconds, understood your business, could answer questions, set up appointments, and honestly be smarter than probably anybody you've ever hired because you're training them. You're putting the information you want in them. And you could have that at 1/10 of the cost of an employee, And that is, the future, And I think it's just a matter of time and who embraces it, who's comfortable embracing it. It's going to be awkward like any technology. But fast forward a year, 2 years from now, if you don't have an AI assistant, even as a person, like I have one just for me, if you don't have one in 2 years, it's going to look like you're you're from the old days. Like people are like, you don't have an AI assistant? What are you doing? So, it's funny to talk about it now because it seems like, quirky and odd, but it's going to be very commonplace. It's like, imagine back in the day when somebody said, oh, you're not on Facebook. It's the same thing. And I'm excited to see it happen because I honestly do think for the first time in a long time since the internet was started and the World Wide Web kind of brought a new world to us, which was very exciting, but then it's been abused for the last 20 years with privacy and advertising. It's just become a very, kind of, I would think the worst side of the human being that you can. I think AI is going to flip that completely over, and I'm excited to see that because quite honestly, I'm kind of sick the way the internet is now, and I think AI is going to make it much, much better.
Well, we appreciate you clearing that up. All right. Thanks, Rich.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
So that's pretty freaky, huh? I mean, this whole AI thing. Well, I have to tell you, I'm thinking myself about maybe trading Melissa in for an AI assistant. Only kidding. But I still may get one anyway, just to try it out and see if I can't train it to help me remember all of the things that I need to do throughout my day. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show, and let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And don't forget, guys, if you like the video, you can also hit that thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, what are you waiting for? Give it a subscribe, hit that alert bell. You'll know every time we upload content just like this. And one of the biggest compliments that you can do for me personally is share this content with your family and friends. See you next time. Sachs Realty, Maryland broker number 607720, office number 443-318-4514, equal housing opportunity.